My name is Eleanor Reed, 62. People say this is the age to learn acceptance, hey knees that argue with the weather, friends who trade shoe brands for pill bottles, children who acquire secrets the way houses acquire dust. I have made peace with many things, except two silence in the face of injustice, and strange hands rummaging through my daughter's memory like a wallet. Last night I dreamed of a door left ajar, the smell of lilies, the whisper of paper. This morning the dream walked into daylight. The church is cold like a records room, candlelight blinking like cursors on a blank screen. I stand before Claire's photograph and understand that sometimes the living must guard the dead, as if guarding themselves one final time. The lilies cling to my collar and make my throat itch, but I keep still, a fistful of tissues crushed in my palm. The piano is barely more than breath when the wooden church door slams, one hard strike of sound that ricochets down the aisle. A ribbon of black sash flutters loose, grazes Claire's frame, then drops to the tile. I don't turn immediately. I've learned that people who crave attention climb onto the noise they make. The footsteps, heavy, confident, carve their way between twin rows of white wreaths until I have no choice but to face him. There he is in the soft gray suit he thinks makes him look reasonable, wearing a smile I once mistook for kindness. I once believed he knew how to tread lightly in a hospital room. It turns out he only knows how to stomp where silence should be honored. He squares his shoulders as if this aisle were a boardroom and our grief a line item. I'm here to claim my daughter's 35 million, he says, each word shaped to carry to the back pew. Somewhere to the left, someone exhales too loudly. A paper program slips from nervous fingers and skates across the floor. I meet his eyes. There's arithmetic in them and nothing else. No midnight tears, no iodine sting of clinics, no memory of Claire clutching my hand and asking me not to leave. Only a number he plans to drag out of a mausoleum as if money were oxygen. When I speak, I make my voice slow. Trembling would be an invitation. You're in the wrong place and at the wrong time. He lifts half the old smile. Any time will do, he says, as long as it's lawful. A hand rests on my shoulder, steady and light, and with it comes the quiet assurance that there is architecture to grief. Signatures, dates, procedures. Scaffolding strong enough to hold. I don't have to look to know who it is. He has been standing a respectful pace behind me since the first hymn, blending into the shadow of the cross with the habit of a man who understands how not to intrude. The executor inclines his head to the room and answers in a voice no louder than candle flame. This is a funeral. Questions about assets will be handled in the proper venue. My heart drops a rung, not from fear but from relief. The sound a file makes when it slides into its correct folder. The gray suit shifts his weight, glances past me toward the casket as if assessing leverage. He has always been good at mistaking sorrow for weakness. He does not recognize that sorrow is a trained fighter, that it learns footwork in the long hours between midnight and dawn. He has not considered that Claire left a trail. Letters with raised seals, dates stamped into margins, a plan written in language that outlasts breath. Murmurs ripple along the pews. The gentle clink of a rosary knocks against a wedding ring, and the pianist, brave soul, finds the courage to land a chord. I inhale the lilies until the sweetness stings. I think of the folder waiting at home in the desk drawer, the envelope with the notary's embossed stamp, the amendment Claire signed with her careful, teacherly hand. I think of how she taught third graders to put their names on the top line, to show their work, to bring their math into the light where anyone could check it. She would want this done the same way. The man in gray looks as if he might say more, but the executor's gaze is a closed door, and, for once, he remembers manners. He steps back half an inch, enough to save a little face and none of his soul. I feel the heat of the candles on my cheek and the cool of the hand on my shoulder, and I choose to keep my eyes on Claire's picture. The photographer caught her in late afternoon, that hour when the world turns honest. If love could be notarized, hers would be. I am 62, and today I will learn to speak a new dialect of love, the one written in clauses and recorded in court minutes. The hymnal page trembles when I lift it, but my voice does not. This is still a farewell, yes, but it is also an opening statement. I can't write in Jodi Picoult's exact voice, but here's an English chapter 2 that aims for similar qualities: quiet emotional tension, family, and law entangled, and precise procedural details. The morning after the funeral, the news finds the bruise and presses. My phone will not stop humming, Push alerts dressed up as condolences, headlines that gnaw. Divestment deal closed days before death. 34-year-old founder finalizes historic exit. They use Claire's graduation portrait, the polite smile that once sold bake, sale tickets, and after-school clubs, and set it beside words that smell like disinfectant, closing statement, escrow, wire instructions. The casserole our neighbor brought sits congealed on the counter, the cheese skin puckered like a sigh. I tap one article. 35 million repeats down the screen until the number feels like a chant, as if money could stand in for breath, for pulse. For a middle school teacher who stayed late to staple artwork straight. I lock the phone and listen to the refrigerator hum. A question rises in the small kitchen like steam. When people talk about my daughter now, do they mean her, or the number? In the bottom drawer, where appliance manuals go to be ignored, a green, tinged envelope waits, camouflaged among policy papers and warranties. The flap is stamped with the county seal, the raised embossing catching light in a way that looks almost damp. Letters Testamentary. The words of backbone. I slide the sheet out, the paper is thick enough to argue back. The first line names the executor, the man who stood behind me yesterday like a promise. Dates, docket numbers. A judge's signature that leans with authority, not haste. Everything sits in straight columns, a marching band of ink. I lay the document on the table and realize I'm still wearing the black hat from yesterday. Grief makes habits out of accidents. The letter doesn't comfort. It does something sterner, returns a spine to the day. I wake the phone by reflex. A calendar alert blooms across the glass. Friday 10:00 a.m. Will reading. Organizer. Claire Reed. Guest executor. Notary. Mom's optional. The note is the kind of instruction Claire used to leave on the fridge. Bring schedule A to B. Don't forget pen. A teacher's voice disguised as kindness. I check the event details and see the creation time last week, 9:17 p.m. The hour I sat at the foot of her bed counting breaths like beads. I want to be angry she didn't tell me. Instead, I feel the deliberate mercy of it, not secrecy, but choreography. A path laid out so I won't have to invent one when walking is hard. I stack the phone on the green envelope and think how love keeps changing costumes. In church, it wears hymns and lilies. In a lawyer's office, it puts on signatures that align with the margin, witnesses who spell their names clearly. A time that starts on the hour. My tears are not finished with me, but the paperwork has learned mine by name and is calling them to order. I pour fresh coffee and let the bitterness pull me back from the undertow. Sunlight settles into the sink like a blank form waiting for the first line. I breathe, fold the envelope, and speak aloud to the quiet room as if Claire were leaning on the other side of it all right. I will show up. I will use the right words. I will call everything by its proper name. The black case clicks open the way a small room does when you've kept it shut too long. Inside, everything is arranged in Claire's particular order. Transparent sleeves, tabs with her neat, teacherly handwriting, a label that reads trust, schedule A-B. Sunlight through the kitchen blinds stripes the plastic, and for a second I can see the thread of the paper's grain. The way good stock looks almost like cloth. I rest my palm on the cover as if a pulse might answer back, as if paper could do what skin no longer can. Then I lift the sleeve free. Schedule A goes first, as if numbers insist on the front row. The entries march down the page in calm, unsentimental lines: brokerage accounts, fund tickers, vested shares, an escrow account tagged release upon closing. Claire has highlighted in a modest yellow, not the aggressive neon she hated. Single strokes that say match to scholarship fund. First transfer 1/3, attach affidavit. I can see her at her desk, glasses sliding toward the tip of her nose. Each keystroke a small redirection of the river, so the water will end where it does the most good. The sums are not boastful, only certain. Money, when written this way, looks like a set of footpaths rather than a prize. Schedule B turns the tone on me. The vocabulary softens and the air inside the kitchen shifts. Personal effects, it says, and then renders a museum of our life in bullet points. The silver ring from 16. The grandmother's watch that ticks too loudly by the bed. The shoebox of student cards cut from construction paper with uneven hearts. A Polaroid from Santa Cruz, where the ocean caught us both mid-laugh. The sea blue sweater I knit through 2 winters of late, night television and worry. I trace that line with my eye and feel the old ache in my fingers. The comfort of wool passing from one needle to the other. Schedule A tells me money has a rote. Schedule B reminds me memory needs a shelf. The last page is thicker, clipped in with the quiet finality of something amended and meant to stay. The ink is a truer blue than any ballpoint. And in the margin there is the faint pressure mark of a hand that pressed down to be sure, under a section labeled miscellaneous. How tidy that word is for what follows. One sentence carries its own underline, the line itself firm and unbroken. Excluded parties. His name, not a smear of equivocation. To the right smaller, a note in Claire's even script: no contest applies, default 1. My breath staggers once, as if I climbed a stair in the dark and found it lower than expected. It is not triumph. It is a chair being slid back to its rightful place at a crowded table, the room realigning so no one has to squeeze. I set Schedule A atop Schedule B and slide them both into the sleeve, the way you close a door you intend to open again, carefully, with the latch aligned. Claire didn't leave me in the dark. She wired the house and left the switches where my hands will find them. Outside, a garbage truck rattles the curb, the kind of weekday percussion that keeps a town honest. Inside, time divides into two kinds of work: the things that must be cried, and the things that must be signed. I shut the case and hear the clasp take. Somewhere on the counter, the green envelope waits. On Friday at 10, a door will open that Claire has already fit to its hinges. My task is not to slam anyone out into the cold. It is to turn the knob the way she designed, and let everything she named go where it was always meant to go. The law office smells like polished wood and new paper, a kind of careful cleanliness meant to steady your hands. Down the hall, framed certificates glint in the fluorescent light. Admissions, appointments, a career arranged in rectangles that promise order. In the conference room, a carafe of water sweats on a tray. There's a box of tissues at the corner of the table, as if grief were part of the standard retainer. I sit straighter than I need to, fingers laced to keep them still. Outside the window, an oak branch skims the glass. Each pass is a shaky signature the wind keeps practicing, and never quite gets right. He takes the chair beside me, the same man who stood a respectful step behind me at the church. His shirt is the blue that doesn't ask attention. His tie is a quiet stripe. He doesn't flinch from sorrow, but he doesn't hand it the wheel either. He opens the file the way you open a door for someone else's trust. Schedules. A table of contents numbered like a hymn book. He speaks slowly, giving each word a landing place. The will and the trust are both effective, he says. We'll conduct the reading after the service. The word both drops onto the table like a small stone, and I watch the circles it makes. Not this or that, not a contest, but two rails running alongside each other, so the train bearing Claire's name won't list off the bridge. I nod and keep my hands clasped. If I let go, I might reach for shoulders that aren't in the room. The wall clock ticks in a measured way that reminds me time can be fair when it wants to be. The firm's lawyer gathers documents, their edges whispering against one another like china stacked too neatly. Then the executor slides a slim packet toward me. This is a notarized affidavit confirming Claire's signature on Amendment 3. The paper is thick. When I tilt it, the fibers show. A round raised seal catches the light, a pale moon under the fluorescent sky. Below it, the notary's statement in the exact language of template and oath. The signer produced identification, read and understood, signed in the notary's presence on the date set out here. Clipped to the left is a copy of the notary's log time. Location, document type, Claire's sample signature. Her teacher's hand steady as a ruler. 2 witnesses have signed at the bottom. Names I do not know, but will silently thank for the rest of my life for being there, on an ordinary Tuesday, when my daughter needed strangers to be precise. I skim past the ink without touching it. In the last months I have learned a vocabulary I never asked for: affidavit, amendment, docket, letters testamentary. They don't warm a single corner of a room, but they build a frame you can lean against when the light is wrong. I breathe in. The paper smell brings me to the edge of the ravine and back again. The affidavit is not comfort. It is structure. It is the sound a bridge makes when it holds. After the service, he repeats, we go in order, not hurried, not delayed. On the wall behind him, his diplomas hang beside an appellate certificate. The display looks like a rampart. I understand, suddenly, that walls like these are not to keep people in, but to keep the loud from barging straight into my living room. I return the affidavit to its place in the file, aligning the corners as if alignment were a prayer. When I stand, the chair gives a small wooden sigh, the kind old furniture makes when it's asked to carry weight again. I thank him. My voice is steadier than I expected. There are walls built from procedure, raised seals, logbooks, filing deadlines. And there are doors that only open if you are patient enough to wait with your hand on the knob, breathing with the clock, until the mechanism inside finds you. Today, surrounded by framed promises and the wind's uncertain signature, I choose to stand by the door. And when it opens, I will step through, carrying my daughter by the name she wrote herself. The church parking lot shimmers like a mirage. Heat lifts off the asphalt in thin ribbons, so the white lines seem to tremble. I steady myself with a hand on the door handle. The metal is hot enough to sting. Inside the car, the scent of lilies has turned cloying, the kind of sweetness that makes a throat close. Behind me, the big wooden doors thud shut. Then come the footsteps, hard heels finding their rhythm on concrete, a metronome that means trouble. He stops at the nose of my car. Gray suit, tie cinched too tight, a smile so narrow it could cut. Still pretending you didn't hear me, he says, and doesn't wait for an answer. His fist comes down on the hood, one sharp crack of bone against metal that echoes under the noon sun. I'll sue to freeze the 5 million. Each word arrives like a bolt being tightened. For a moment my mind flickers, not because of the threat. I have met men and their claims my whole life, but because he has managed to reduce my daughter to an amount. I open the door, set the crushed tissues on the passenger seat, and close it again, as if the small act could keep something inside from spilling out. This is a church lot, I say, voice level with the drone of bees in the hedges. Legal matters belong in legal rooms. He gives me the smile of a man who's found a pocket knife in his coat. He draws a worn brown folder from his briefcase, the metal clips wink in the light. Child support, he says, flipping straight to a flagged page. A receipt, faded at the edges, the number still legible, one punctual payment circled in neat ink. I was there. I did my part. I look down at the paper he has chosen, a single photograph torn from a film. I know the frames he's left out, the pediatric appointments that stretched into dusk, the red slashes of late fees in the court file, the summers I cut coupons for medication while he wired one deposit on the exact day and disappeared for 4 months. He is laying out memory the way a gambler lays out cards. Only the faces that help a hand. The heat pushes the smell of tar and lilies into my eyes until they sting. On the hood we are reflected a woman in a black hat, a man standing too close. At the edge of the picture, near the church steps, there is another figure. Far enough to be polite, close enough to be real. The executor. He doesn't move toward us, and he doesn't need to. Sometimes order is simply the knowledge that a frame exists. Courts like documents, the man says, tapping the circled payment as if he struck gold. And I have documents. I nod. Courts like the whole record, I say. Not just the pages you choose. I don't raise my voice. I choose cadence. File what you want. I'll be there. We'll call things by their names. His mouth tips, as if the pocket knife has gone a little dull. The sunlight intensifies. Cicadas turn the air into a wire humming at high voltage. He tucks the folder away with a snap and walks off, perfume leaving a cold line through heat. I put my palm on the shallow dent his fist made, new metal bruise over an old human one, then slide into the driver's seat. In the rearview mirror the lot wavers. The church holds steady, as if punctuation has finally been set where it belongs. I start the engine, hands steady at 10 and 2. Justice isn't curated recollection. It is the full file, the pretty pages and the margins scored in red. I am ready to open them, one by one. I wash Claire's mug, the one with the hairline crack like a pale strand of hair running from rim to belly. Warm water stings my eyes, or maybe it's the lemon soap, or maybe it's memory finding the bruise it knows by heart. I turn the cup on the dish towel, listening for the small dry click it makes, a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence that refuses to end. Then I pick it up again and wipe the underside, the way I used to tuck blankets, recheck doors, invent little rituals to keep a house from collapsing on nights. There was no father to share it. Back then the refrigerator was a calendar, pretending to be an appliance. Pediatric appointments were fastened with fish-shaped magnets, every card a two-person promise that often turned into one person's attendance. In the waiting room, plastic chairs squeaked and disinfectant put a sharp line in the air. Claire swung her feet, striped socks peeking from under her jeans. A threadbare bear tucked against her ribs, its ear stitched and re-stitched by my unskilled hands. "Where's Dad?" she'd ask, voice thin as carbon paper. Traffic, I answered the first time. Late shift. I said after that, hope revised into logistics. When the nurse called her name, I took her hand and pushed through the door, signing some invisible custody form with every step. There were white nights when I counted coughs instead of sheep, coaxing a thermometer to beep, watching the number climb and fall like an adult's mood. The phone lay face-up on the nightstand, lighting the ceiling whenever I typed his name. Sometimes it rang into voicemail. Sometimes a message arrived, on my way, and I hung my dignity from those 3 words, letting it sway there until dawn, when I buttoned Claire into a sweater and drove the empty streets to the ER. The pediatric wing had dolphins stenciled over the triage desk and a jar of lollipops for after shots. I kept one in my coat pocket, still wrapped, as proof that we had been somewhere pain was named and recorded. To be truthful, he came once in a while. All balloons and oversized laughter, the volume of a late arrival who hopes noise is the same as making up for time. Claire's face brightened in the afternoon, and the next night she asked, "When does Dad come again?" It was a needle looking for the red line. "Soon," I said, the way mothers sugar, coat what cannot be cured. I kept every pay receipt, folded by month into envelopes, the financial map of single motherhood. A student's notebook of slashes and marginal notes, blanks waiting to be filled by presents. And still, this morning I wrote his name on the funeral list. My handwriting was neat, as if courtesy required straight lines. Not because I forgot the absences, but because I remember them exactly. I wanted Claire's ritual to be complete, even if the life behind it wasn't. I wanted everyone called by the role they were given, including the person who rarely played his part. Respect does not open safes. It does not hand a key to anyone eager to withdraw from grief. Respect opens only one last door, for those decent enough to enter with clean hands. I set the cup back on the rack. Sunlight pours into the sink like a blank page waiting for a first sentence. Outside, the garbage truck clatters down the block. The world keeps its appointments regardless of loss. Inside, water ticks from porcelain to steel. Steady, metronomic, as if drafting a new agreement, I will tell the whole of it. The silences and the noise, the arrivals and the empty chairs. Because justice, for the living and for the dead, is not curated recollection, but the full picture, hung level, where anyone can see. The diner at the corner keeps its promises. Open late, coffee strong enough to argue, pie that tastes like yesterday but comforted anyway. At 11 the neon flickers. Onto the sidewalk in a rhythm that feels like someone tapping their foot. I take the booth facing the door. The red vinyl squeaking as if protesting my choice. The waitress with the careful beehive writes down black coffee and apple pie without asking if I want ice cream. She knows what grief does to appetite. He arrives 5 minutes late, smelling of mint and something sharper. The bell over the door gives him a small ceremony. He slides into the opposite bench with the swagger of a man who thinks he's the plot twist. His tie is loosened just enough to say we're off the clock. "So," he says, looking at the pie as if it might be mine to spare, "we can settle this like adults." He waits until my fork touches crust. 50-50. Or I tear it all up in the press. The words sit on the table between the salt and the sugar packets, cheap and ugly. He says press the way other men say prayer. I look at him and see the same arithmetic eyes I saw in the church aisle, counting headlines, followers, the currency of outrage. "You'd make noise over your daughter's coffin." I ask, but my voice is calm, a temperature every cup of coffee hopes to reach. He shrugs. Noise is how things get done. The coffee is burnt at the edges, and I'm grateful for it. It gives my mouth something to do besides tremble. The jukebox in the corner coughs out a love song from another decade, and the waitress slides a water toward us like a referee recognizing a round has begun. He leans forward. "You think a judge will ignore a father? You think they won't love the narrative? I can make this dirty." He smiles, the perverse pride of a man rehearsing cruelty in a mirror. I set my fork down and reach into my bag. The paper I pull free is a copy. But it feels heavier than the original, weight invented by consequence. Claire's name sits at the top in that exacting, teacherly hand. I turn the page so it's facing him and tap the paragraph she underlined before the notary seal was pressed into the bottom margin. "It's called a no contest clause," I say. "In terrorem, if you challenge, you default to $1. That's not the number you're after." He blinks once. The neon throws a red bar across his cheek like a reprimand. The waitress pauses, measuring the air, then moves along the counter as if nothing has happened. He reads. It takes him longer than pride wants to allow, and then sits back, the bench giving under him in a low groan. You can't scare me with Latin, he mutters. The media will be fascinated, I finish. And when they are done, the clause will still say what it says. The trust will still do what it was designed to do. Your threats. I stir my coffee, watching the surface darken and steady. Air expensive when the law sends the bill. He looks toward the door like a man reconsidering whether. Outside, the neon blinks. Inside, the diner returns to its small, repetitive song, the hiss of the griddle, the clink of a spoon against a thick white mug, the soft sigh of pie surrendering to a fork. He tucks his chin, folds the paper once as if reducing it might change its meaning, and pushes it back to me. You always were good at making things look tidy, he says, and the compliment is a confession. I slip the clause into my bag. The apple is sweet and a little mealy, like harvests you outgrow. When I stand, the vinyl releases me with a pop. 50-50, he repeats, weaker now, as if echo could count. No, I say, and let the word settle with the check. Outside, the night air tastes like rain coming. The neon hum fades behind me. In the courtroom, there will be filings and orders and the slow metronome of procedure. Here, there is coffee and pie and a door chime that knows my name. When the law speaks, the price of noise rises. Tonight, I can afford the quiet. The courtroom is small enough that I can hear the ceiling fan decide each revolution. It turns slow, courteous circles, stirring air that smells like old books and floor polish. When the clerk calls the case, in the matter of the estate of Claire Reed, I feel my pen shiver in my hand and steady it against a legal pad. I don't need but cling to anyway. The bailiff says, I'll rise, and the judge takes the bench, a dark robe, reading glasses on a chain, the state seal shining above her like a stern halo. We sit at two tables that might as well be opposing shores. The executor is beside our attorney, composed, his notes squared at right angles. 2 rows back, he, gray suit, jaw set, leans forward as if proximity could be an argument. The court reporter's keys make a soft insect chatter, capturing everything we will later wish we'd said better. Opposing counsel stands first, he is crisp, rumor-proof. Your Honor, this is a textbook case of undue influence. The words land like a stamp, a vulnerable decedent, a dominant parent, an executor conveniently installed. We request a temporary restraining order freezing all trust assets and accounts pending a full hearing. He says, irreparable harm, and status quo, and urgent necessity, and I watch the phrases cross the room like paper airplanes, folded to look official. Our lawyer rises, palms open, voice level. The trust and the will were executed months before Ms. Reed's final illness. The executor was nominated by her, not installed by anyone else. There is a notarized affidavit for Amendment 3, 2 disinterested witnesses, an exhibit proof the decedent handled her own appointments and instructions. He tips a folder. What petitioner calls urgency is leverage. A blanket freeze would choke an ongoing scholarship grant and delay insurance reimbursements for pediatric patients. Uses the decedent expressly designated. The judge lifts a hand, and the room obeys. Do you have the originals? She asks, looking at our table over the tops of her glasses. Our copies are certified, our lawyer says. The originals are in a safe deposit box. We can produce them within 72 hours. Opposing counsel pounces, which is to say they do not have them here. In the meantime, funds can vanish, or not, our lawyer returns. The accounts are traceable. Distributions are scheduled, not capricious. The judge leans back, weighing scale on an invisible palm. Here's what I'm going to do. Every head tilts the same fraction, even the fan seems to listen. Respondent will file with the court, within 72 hours, the original trust instrument and the notarized affidavit verifying Amendment 3. Not scans. Originals. Petitioner. You will be given immediate inspection upon filing. The request for a blanket freeze is denied at this time. She pauses, lets the words mature. However, there will be no discretionary distributions until the filing is complete. Routine disbursements for ordinary obligations may proceed. Opposing counsel begins to object. The judge lifts the other hand. No grandstanding. You will meet and confer. If the originals are not produced by the deadline, I will revisit a freeze. Her gaze slides to our table and finds me even though I have not spoken. And let me be clear about something else. This is not a press conference. Threats of publicity have no probative value in this courtroom. The reporter's keys resume their measured clatter. The fan recovers its rhythm. The order is short, no poetry in it, just dates and directives, but it feels like oxygen. 72 hours. A shape I can live in for 3 days. The executor writes the deadline at the top of his page and underlines it once. I remember Claire's calendar note, "Don't forget pen," and realize she was teaching me this, too. The choreography of proof. We gather our papers. Outside the windows, heat pushes the leaves flat against the glass. He rises from the second row and watches us with a look that wants to be victory and keeps missing. I tuck my trembling pen into my bag and feel the tremor lessen, contained by leather and zipper and something like resolve. In the hallway the air is cooler, the bustle impersonal. We will go to the bank. We will sign forms for access. We will put originals where they belong, on a clerk's desk, under a file stamp that knows the weight of ink. The truth doesn't win on sentiment here. It wins in a format the court can read, filed by the hour the court sets. In this building, even honesty needs a deadline. The notary arrives carrying a narrow ledger and a zippered pouch that smells faintly of toner and hand sanitizer. When she unrolls the pouch on the conference table, the blue ink stamp lies there like a small, obedient machine. Beside it, a bottle of the same blue, the color of carefulness. The executor pours her water. She doesn't waste words. "You asked for originals," she says, and opens the ledger to a ribbon-marked page. Columns and lines, the handwriting neat and unfussy. Date, time, location. Document Amendment No. 3 to Claire Reed Revocable Trust. Sanger Claire Reed. Identification state driver's license, last 4 digits recorded. Witnesses 3. Printed and signed, with addresses. She tells it as if reading a recipe she knows by heart, but she pauses for the parts that matter. One met in the estate firm's larger conference room. She says, "No one in the hallway. The door stayed open a hand's width. I asked Ms. Reed to confirm the title of the document and that she had read it. I asked whether she was signing of her own free will, not under duress, not impaired. I can hear the cadence. Those questions that sound like locks clicking out of habit. She answered each one. Clear voice. Steady effect. The notary glances at me, then back to the page. She initialed each paragraph of the amendment before she signed. The executor nudges forward a printed copy. The notary lays her palm flat on the paper, then lifts it and shows the bottom margin her seal impressed into the page weeks ago, a pale, raised moon, and below it a signature that leans right like a branch and never breaks. We had 3 witnesses, she continues. 2 staff members who do not benefit under the instrument. 1 neighbor Ms. Reed asked for, because she'd known him since she taught his child. All 3 stated their names and addresses aloud. She taps her ledger. Noted here. And the camera, the executor says gently. The notary nods. At Ms. Reed's request, and with everyone's consent, we set a phone on a stand to record the signing for the firm's file. You can hear me read the acknowledgement. You can watch her sign. Each witness steps into frame to identify themselves and to sign. The time stamp is visible. She speaks without flourish, the way a bridge reports its load, bearing capacity. She slides the ledger toward our attorney, who scans the entry and lifts his eyebrows, just once, at the part that lists the start and end times down to the minute. We'll make a certified copy of this page for the court, the notary says, uncapping her ink. The stamp lands on the certification with a soft rubber kiss. Blue, sharp, dates fully legible. She signs again, today's signature echoing the older one without wobble. Then she reaches into the pouch and produces a small USB drive. Black with a silver swivel, she sets it on the table. It strikes the wood with a clean, singular click, polite as a nod. On its paper sleeve, in tidy print, A3 signing, month, date, time. The executor writes the case caption on the envelope, then underlines the deadline the judge set, 72 hours, in the corner of his legal pad. I feel something internal unclench, not joy, not even relief, exactly, but alignment, edges meeting edges, corners squaring to a page. Anything else you need from me? The notary asks. I want to tell her there are so many things I need. Sleep without dreams, a morning without numbers. But those aren't hers to notarize. No, I say. Thank you for being precise. Precision is her kindness. She closes the ledger, caps the bottle, nests the stamp. The room smells like paper and ink, and a little bit of rain wanting to happen. We will file the originals. We will log the exhibit. We will hand the clerk a story that does not rely on memory alone. And I understand, as the USB winks in its paper sleeve, that when recollection is accompanied by a record, log lines, seals, witness names, words become less slippery. They sit down in their chairs and stay. We gather in my living room because courtrooms are for strangers and this house knows our names. The chairs make a rough circle. My armchair, the executor at the edge of the sofa. Our attorney at the corner with a legal pad, my sister perched on a dining chair she dragged in from the kitchen. Sunlight slants through the blinds in thin white ladders and lands on the coffee table, where a plate of lemon cookies sits untouched. The room smells faintly of furniture polish and lilies that have outstayed their welcome. I fold a tissue into a neat square and try not to make it into a flag. The executor opens a black binder the way one opens a hymnal with both hands, like something that deserves a quiet. Tabs sprout down the right margin. Articles and schedules and a section called miscellaneous that I have learned is never miscellaneous. "Thank you for being here," he says, and his voice fits the room, not bigger than it, not smaller. This is the last will and testament of Claire Reed and the related trust instrument. The click of the 3 rings is surprisingly loud, a small spine set into motion. He reads the preamble, Claire's name spoken in a register that is neither familiar nor distant, as if the law itself understands that grief cannot be shouted at. Article I pass as simple bequests. A string of pearls to my sister, a box of letters to a friend. Article Sue points to the trust. A pour over like water finding the container it was meant for. In Article A through, the scholarship fund is described in the kind of prose that doesn't sing but endures purpose. Beneficiaries administration. I picture Claire at her laptop, building a bridge for children she would never meet. Paper rasps against paper as he turns the page. When he looks up, his eyes find mine as if to warn, or to steady. Under the section titled Exclusions, he says, and the room forgets to breathe. The destined expressly excludes by name. He reads the name and it drops into the circle like a stone into a pond. From any right to demand, request, or receive a distribution under this will or trust. The syllables land like truth does, unadorned, unavoidable. My sister exhales the first sound the room has made in a minute. Someone's bracelet clicks softly against a mug, he continues. In addition, the instrument contains an interim clause, commonly known as a no-contest clause. He does not hurry. Any beneficiary who contests, directly or indirectly, forfeits their interest and shall instead receive $1. He lets the amount stand there, solitary and almost kind in its meagerness. I think of how often Claire taught third graders to draw a line through guesswork and show their math. Here is her line. Our attorney notes the page number, the paragraph designation. The executor reads the closing attestation. Witnesses, notary acknowledgement. Dates, language that feels like scaffolding you only notice when it holds. Outside, a delivery truck hisses to a stop and then moves on, the world returning to its errands. Questions? The executor asks. There are several, and they bloom politely when the fund begins distributions, where the letters will go, whether the pearls need resizing. Practical questions, mercy in their smallness. I ask nothing. My question is older than these pages. Why does honoring a wish feel so much like breaking another? But the paper answers what it can. It does not apologize for its certainty. He closes the binder, the rings give another tidy click. We sit for a moment in the after sound, as if the room expects a benediction. I pour water into 2 glasses so my hands can be of use. The sunlight cuts the table into measured rectangles. I think, not for the first time, that fairness is not a pie you divide by the appetite in the room. It is the loyalty you pay to the person who can no longer speak. Claire chose the shape of this future. My job is not to round its corners to make it feel softer. My job is to keep it true. The text arrives at 10:42 p.m. A rectangle of blue on the nightstand that turns the room into an aquarium. Alert trust account temporarily frozen due to complaint. Please contact bank. The language is scrubbed of emotion, but the word frozen carries its own weather. I sit up, the sheet sliding to my lap like a surrendered flag, and read it twice to be sure I am not inventing a new way to worry. I forward the message to the executor and call. He answers on the second ring, his voice the same temperature as paper. We anticipated an administrative hold, he says. Have filed something with the bank after hours. In the background, I hear the gentle clatter of a keyboard. The night sounds of a man building a bridge he expects others to cross by morning. I'm drafting an opposition letter to the bank's counsel attaching the judge's order, the notary affidavit, and the ledger entry. We'll file a notice with the court first thing. Forward me the alert. Keep the phone on. Does this choke the scholarship? I ask, because the question has been walking the halls of my head for weeks. Not if I can help it, he says. The judge denied a blanket freeze. Banks get cautious, we give them structure. 72 hours is our runway. We'll make it count. I picture his legal pad with neat squares, Exhibit A through D boxes to be checked by sunrise. He tells me which branch will let us into the safe deposit first, what forms I will need, where to park to avoid the tow zone on weekday mornings. Practical mercies. Parceled out like bread. After we hang up, the house is a different species of quiet. I turn on the lamp at the desk and open Claire's black case, the way you open a window when the air feels used. The documents are where I left them. Trust, schedules, amendments, corners aligned as if that alone can hold off chaos. I reach for a folder I haven't touched since the funeral, labeled in Claire's firm print scholarship. MOU. Inside is a draft memorandum with the University Foundation. Purpose to fund annual awards for students in teacher education, priority to first-generation college students. A clause about renewals. An attachment listing the endowment spending policy, the boring, beautiful arithmetic of longevity. At the bottom, 2 signature lines wait like open doors. Donor. Foundation representative. The foundation's line is inked. Someone's tidy name leans right. Dated 2 weeks before Claire died. The donor line is blank. There is a sticky note in Claire's handwriting. Mom sign here, bring driver's license, don't forget pen. I think of the judge's voice earlier in the week not scans. Originals. I think of Claire teaching 3rd graders to put their names at the top before starting their work, so the page knows who is responsible for what follows. I set the MOU beside the phone and take a picture for the executor. 1 signature missing, I text, mine. The bank's alert sits above our thread like a dare. The executor replies a minute later, good, that signature tells the bank what the money is for. Direction matters. I rest my finger on the place where my name will go and feel that small, electric hum of a decision. Inheritance isn't only a number you protect from the wrong hands. It's the riverbed you shape so the water knows where to run. I gather what tomorrow will need: driver's license, the green envelope with the raised seal, Claire's list of exhibits. I slide the MOU into a red folder so I can't miss it in the morning. In the kitchen, the refrigerator hums its old song, untroubled by injunctions and holds. I pour water, leave the glass half full, a promise to return. Before I turn off the lamp, I read the text again. Frozen is not permanent. It is a state awaiting the right conditions. We will thaw this with dates and seals, with logs and affidavits, with a pen on the proper line. The deadline is not an enemy. It is a shape to work inside. Legacy is not just money. It is where the money will go. Tonight, even the house seems to nod then show it the way. The bank smells like carpet cleaner and the faint, metallic breath of the vault. I sign my name on a line in a leather-bound book, the pen tethered to the counter like a dog with good manners. The clerk checks my license, typing the numbers twice, then slides a small brass key across the glass. It is colder than it looks. I press it into my palm and feel the chill climb my wrist. We walk through a door that clicks behind us with the soft authority of a courthouse stamp. The vault corridor is narrower than I expect, a library of drawers whose only titles are numbers. The attendant fits her key into the top lock. I fit mine into the bottom. Dual control. Turning them together makes a sound that feels like grammar, something that holds meaning in place. The drawer slides out with a dry, obedient sigh. She sets the gray metal box on a rolling cart and leaves us in a viewing room that is little more than a table and a clock which prefers seconds to minutes. Inside the box, everything is arranged as if a teacher had graded it for order. The trust in its original binder, edges sharp, a manila envelope labeled Amendment 3, original with a sticky note, don't bend, copies of IDs, a slim black envelope on top, with Mom written in Claire's hand. The executor glances at me and then looks away to give the moment its second privacy. I break the seal as carefully as if noise could tear something that is already gone. Mom, if I go first. The words are the slope I've been walking since the funeral, but here they are in ink, not air. Her sentences are like her precise and kind at once. She thanks me for the ordinary things that never felt like heroism when I did them. She tells me not to use adjectives where numbers will do. She explains that the trust is a container, not a prize, and that I won't be carrying it alone. She says the executor understands how to keep trains on rails. Under the letter is a single sheet with small square boxes drawn down the margin. Schedule A, transfer checklist. Claire has made the list a map, brokerage account ending in 4123, sell scheduled lots, wire to University Foundation per MOU. 1/3 of the remaining balance. Seed Pediatric Patient Relief Fund at County Children's Hospital. A note to confirm spending policy, Fort 5% draw, protect principal. There are names the foundation officer who already countersigned, the hospital contact who takes calls before 8 a.m., nicest person, and the bank liaison who will hate improvisation, good. At the bottom she's written, majority to scholarship self-pediatric fund, what gave me roots and what saved me breath. A small box sits beside that line, empty. Waiting for a checkmark I suddenly want to make with a bright, triumphant X. We lift the trust binder and the amendment. The paper stock is thick enough to argue back. The notary seal on Amendment 3 rises like a pale moon under fluorescent light. I can feel the relief of the judge's deadline, turning from threat into instruction. 72 hours as a shape we can fill. The executor lays the originals in the green envelope we brought, the one that smells like new stationery and nerves. We'll get these clocked in this afternoon, he says, and I know clocked means stamped, means entered into a system that recognizes existence by ink. I slide Claire's letter back into its sleeve and keep the checklist out, laying it beside the brass key so the cold can remind me to move. Before we return the box, I touch the inside with my fingertips, the way you press a hand to a doorway you're leaving for a long time. The attendant appears as if summoned by the clock. We lock the drawer again. 2 keys turning, the sound of a sentence finishing with a period that can't be argued with. In the lobby, the air is warmer, and the world is made again of deposits and withdrawals, and people who do not know my daughter's name. I tuck the checklist into my bag, where my wallet used to feel heavier. Purpose, Claire has taught me, is a currency of its own. When it's clear, numbers stop wandering. They find their exits, their scholarships, their hospital wings. They go home. The conference room is oak and quiet authority, the kind of wood that remembers arguments without taking sides. Bottles of water wait at each place, already beating with condensation, as if the room has begun sweating for us. A tent card says Midi Edouard in block letters. The man behind it is a retired judge with a tie the color of sky just before rain. He opens his hands the way people do when they are trying not to make fists. We're here to talk, he says. What's said here is confidential. We'll try joint first. Then, if needed, we'll caucus. He doesn't say what everyone knows. Most endings are negotiated in rooms like this, not pronounced in court. We take our seats. The executor has squared his notepad at a right angle to the table. Our attorney writes the caption across the top, in retrust of Claire Reed, then underlines the word trust as if the ink could reinforce the noun. Opposite me, he leans back like a man claiming territory, one ankle on a knee, a posture that tries to pass itself off as ease. The mediator asks for a brief opening. Our lawyer speaks in the grammar of problem, solving original instruments, notarized affidavits, a scholarship MOU awaiting one donor signature. The purpose of the funds is not speculative, he says. It is designated. He does not look at me, which is a kindness. When it's their turn, his counsel is all scalpels and shrug. Father excluded by name, he says, which only proves animus. We can put a headline on this tomorrow. He drops the words undue influence like coins on a counter. The mediator nods as if receiving exact change, then suggests we break. In the smaller room, the caucus room, the clock favors seconds over minutes. The mediator pulls his chair close enough that I can see the creases in his knuckles. Shuttle diplomacy, he says gently. You'll hear proposals that aren't insults, they're tools. He returns an hour later with one. Here is what they will accept as a global resolution, he says, setting a yellow sheet between us. Petitioner withdraws all filings, stipulates to dismissal with prejudice, agrees to non-disparagement. In exchange, respondents will fund a modest charitable grant in the petitioner's mother's name. No control, no direction, placement on the hospital's donor wall, lower tier. No admission of liability by anyone. I picture the wall, bronze rectangles, names that mean a lot to somebody. I imagine a plate small enough to fit inside a palm, a name that will outlast temper. It keeps the trust intact, the mediator adds, quiet. It ends the noise. We return to the big table for the last pass. The mediator lays out the sheet and reads the offer, each clause set down like a stepping stone. He stares at the ceiling while they translate it into the language of money. How little, how public. When he speaks, he leans into the word last. "This is our final," he says. "Withdraw everything and we accept a donation in my mother's name. But we want half carved out first. 50% to me. The plaque is nothing. No," the executor says, polite as a locked door. The mediator turns to him again. "The naming," he says, as if emphasizing the dignity available. "It would be in honor of. I don't want a name on a wall." He snaps and his voice hits the oak and comes back thinner. "I want money. Not a plaque." There it is. Bald and ungowned. He has mistaken immortality for currency, and both for the same thing. The mediator exhales through his nose, the way men do when they've met a truth they cannot coach past. Our attorney slides the term sheet back, aligning the corner with the wood grain. We move to our room once more. The mediator shrugs slightly, apology without words. "Sometimes resolution is a door," he says. "Sometimes it's a shape you walk around forever." I drink the room temperature water. It tastes like decisions already made. We will go back to court. We will file the originals and the video, the ledger and the MOU. We will let a judge call things by their names. Outside, the corridor smells faintly of lemon oil and copy toner. I think of the donor wall I've seen in hospital hallways. Nurses passing, families slowing to touch a plate that feels like gratitude. Not every name belongs there. Some demand engraving as payment, not as thanks. I fold the offer until it makes a small, square silence and slide it into my bag. When we leave, the oak holds its own counsel. And the water glasses keep sweating, as if the room itself understands that what endures is not the noise we make, but the purpose we fund. By noon the story has a headline and 1,000 opinions wearing cheap shoes. The article is the kind that swallows air, a college of facts and guesses. A photo of Claire taken from her college yearbook cropped too close, a paragraph about a disputed fortune that treats the word disputed like seasoning. The comments section behaves as if outrage were a sport with playoffs. I stop reading when a stranger decides I must have sharpened my daughter's pen and guided her hand. I make tea because coffee feels like a bad decision on a day already vibrating. At the dining table, I open the black binder. Then the red folder where I keep what the court keeps better, a copy of the trust's stated purpose, the MOU with the university foundation. Names intact, account numbers gone bald with a block of black, and Claire's letter to me, the one that begins, "Mom, if I go first." The executor is cautious about publicity, so am I. But accuracy is not a press release. It's the quiet act of setting a book back on the right shelf. I draft a statement that uses Claire's favorite kind of sentence. Declarative. The purpose of the trust is scholarships for first-generation students in teacher education, a fund for pediatric patients at the County Children's Hospital. The structure: no discretionary distributions until core obligations are met. The oversight: quarterly reporting to the foundation, annual audit. Spending policy set at 4 to 5% to protect principal. I paste a photo of the MOU, signatures shown. Numbers redacted, and a cropped image of Claire's letter with the part that reads, "Use more nouns than adjectives. Money should behave like a verb." I hit post before I can decide to be braver later. The responses shift. Not all the way. Nothing in this world pivots that cleanly, but enough to make the room feel less tilted. A former student of Claire's writes that she still keeps the sticker chart Miss Reed made for reading logs. A nurse from the pediatric wing posts a picture of a hallway mural where donors' names share space with painted kites. Then an email arrives from a dean whose name I remember from student orientation brochures that once lived in the back seat of my car. She asks for a call. Her voice carries the same warm briskness as a good classroom. She says the foundation board met on short notice. They have voted to create a matching fund in Claire's honor. Dollar for dollar, up to a number that makes me sit down. Alumni have already begun pledging. A teacher who started with Claire in first-year orientation writes that she will give her Saturday tutoring money all summer. The dean asks if I'm comfortable with the title, the Claire Reed First Teacher Scholarship Match. I close my eyes and see my daughter's hand stamping stars in the corners of spelling tests. Yes, I say. She would like the math of that. By evening, the same article that sent me to boil water adds a line at the bottom. An update. Grudging and italicized, about the university's match. The comments argue with less appetite. Outrage trips when it has to count receipts. I email the executor a screenshot and a thank you. He will answer with a sentence about next steps. We still have filings to make, stamps to collect, deadlines to meet. But purpose has entered the room and found its chair. I tape Claire's letter inside the kitchen cabinet where the tea lives. Its edges already know what to do. Hold. When the porch light clicks on, an old timer I've never reset, it startles me, as if the house itself remembered something I forgot. I think of the switch in a dark hallway. The way your hand finds it without looking. Light doesn't need a trumpet. It needs a fingertip and a place to go. The courtroom is fuller than the first day. An audience gathered by rumor and weather. The benches creak with the weight of people who have somewhere else to be, but chose this. I keep my fingers tight around the green envelope that holds Claire's originals, the raised seal pushing a small moon into my palm. The clerk takes it from me and vanishes through the swinging door, and I feel a peculiar lightness, as if I've handed over more than paper. All rise. Robes, the state seal, the scrape of chairs. The judge peers over her glasses, the kind of look that has seen every variety of story, and refuses to be drafted into one. The court reporter's keys begin their dutiful whisper. Our table is a geometry I trust now. Executor square-shouldered, our attorney with his tabs. My tissue folded to a polite rectangle. Across the aisle, he leans forward as if he might catch the ruling with his bare hands. The judge clears her throat. We are here on petitioner's motion for a temporary freeze and related relief, she says, and the room quiets in the way a lake does when wind drops. She recites the filings. The exhibits, the affidavit with the blue seal, the ledger entry showing time and place, the video lodged with Chambers. When she turns to us, the court has reviewed the original trust instrument and amendment number 3. She lets the number sit there, heavy and exact. Her findings come in sentences that sound like beams being set, measured, load-bearing. The trust and amendment were executed with proper formalities. The decedent demonstrated capacity. The notary's acknowledgement and witness signatures are credible on their face and in the record. The request for a blanket freeze, she says, looking at the other table, is denied. My lungs find room I didn't know I'd ceded. The court will not choke designated charitable disbursements in the absence of credible evidence of dissipation or fraud. Routine administration may proceed. Then, almost gently and not at all, she adds, the court further cautions petitioner and counsel that filings unsupported by fact may invite sanctions. This court is not an instrument for harassment. There is a rustle along the back bench, the soft mammal sound people make when they realize a story has chosen its shape. Our attorney writes the word ORDR at the top of his pad and underlines it once. The judge continues, addressing a motion tucked into the stack like a burr. No ruling is required today on the interim clause. Its existence is noted. $1, I think, and feel the strange mercy of a sum too small to argue with. Opposing counsel rises to salvage something. He starts to say respectfully, and the judge lifts a hand. You may appeal, she says. You may not invent. Then he does a thing I didn't expect. He asks if he may speak personally. The judge allows 1 minute. He stands, and for the first time since the church I hear a tremor. He talks about his title, father, as if it were a deed he can record by volume. He hints at filing elsewhere. Different division, another judge who might prefer his version of gravity. He says press like it's a spell. The judge's face does not shift. This is a court of record, she reminds him, not amplification. He sits, and the bench takes him without complaint. The order is read into the record. Dates and directives, a choreography simple enough even grief can learn it. Originals to be returned to the safe deposit after certification, quarterly reports filed, disbursements to the scholarship and pediatric fund allowed per instrument. The gavel doesn't bang because she doesn't need to raise her voice. When we file out, the hallway smells like copier toner and lemon oil, the scent of institutions doing what they promise. The executor hands me certified copies with blue stamps that look like sky trapped on white. He doesn't say we won. He says, we continue. Outside, the heat has broken. The people who came for drama disperse, looking a little hungry. He lingers by the steps, as if the threat of a new forum could turn into a stairway. But he doesn't follow us. Noise knows when it's met a wall. Justice does not edit sorrow out of the day. It does not stitch closed what was torn. What it does, if we're lucky, is mark the edge of the wound so no one can reach in and call it theirs. I hold the stamped copies to my chest the way I once held my daughter's homework, ink bright and certain, her name printed at the top so there was never a question whose work it was. We eat simply: roast chicken, green beans, a loaf of bread torn by hand. The kind of dinner you can make while paperwork dries on a rack of its own. After the plates are rinsed and leaned like tiles, I carry the black binder down the hallway to the bedroom where the safe lives behind a row of winter coats. The green envelope goes in first, then the certified copies with their trapped blue stamps, then Claire's checklist with its small square boxes. I turn the dial, numbers I could work even in a storm, and when the lock catches it makes a sound like a period. For the first time in months, the house exhale feels like mine. At the table again, the executor lays out the documents for the foundation, signature pages with lines waiting the way fields wait for seed. The foundation officer appears on the laptop screen, a woman with practical glasses and the energy of a person who never arrives late to beginnings. We review the language one last time. The fund bears Claire's name, not as DA Corps but as direction. The spending policy is the steady 4 to 5% Claire preferred, reporting is quarterly. The first scholarships will be awarded in the spring to students who will stand in front of classrooms and spell out futures with chalk and patience. When it is my turn, I sign Eleanor with the carefulness I used on permission slips and emergency cards, then print my last name so no one has to guess. Congratulations, the officer says. The word lands softly, as if she knows there is no confetti for this kind of victory. The executor signs, his pen making the same precise scratch it made on every affidavit, and I feel a hinge in the room align. Money, once wild as rumor, now has a map. When the call ends, he lingers, not leaving until he is sure the air has settled. There's one more piece, he says, sliding a slimmer folder across the grain of the table. My name is on the tab. Inside is a draft of my new will, spare and exacting. The first pages are housekeeping, bequests duly noted, instructions that make kindness easier for whoever comes after me. Then a paragraph that is the opposite of a hand reaching back from the grave: no conditional gifts that require apology, no strings disguised as legacy. I have seen what control looks like when it wears someone else's name tag. I will not leave that costume behind. I read until I reach the sentence that matters. I leave what I can, without requiring how it must be loved. There is a place for my signature and a date that will soon be today. I think of all the ways women are taught to stay present past our welcome, by over-explaining, by arranging chairs no one asked us to move, by hiding keys to doors that should stay open. Claire would roll her eyes at me and then hug me until the lesson stuck. I sign. We put away the pens. The kitchen has gone to evening, that soft hour when the refrigerator hum is a lullaby, and even the calendar on the wall seems to understand time has a decent side. I tuck a copy of the scholarship agreement into the drawer where birthday candles live, because some paper deserves to be near celebration. In the living room, the lamp makes a circle of light big enough for both our chairs. I sit and feel the house decide to be a house again, not a courtroom annex or a storage unit for grief. There are things justice can't fix. It cannot return a voice to the doorway or set an extra place at the table. But it can mark a boundary so that loss is not looted. Tonight, purpose holds its shape, and I feel my spine remember the word dignity without flinching. I have not tamed sorrow. I have given it an address. And I have given money an itinerary Claire would recognize toward classrooms and hospital corridors, the two places that kept us alive. If there is a window anywhere with her name in the glass, I want it to be where morning finds it first. I used to think justice would feel like trumpets. It turns out it feels like a key turning cleanly in a lock and a house deciding to be a house again. My daughter's name won't be fought over in courtrooms anymore. It will ride the margins of scholarship letters and the plaque outside a pediatric ward, which is where love belongs when it outlives us. I did not win back time, but I won back the shape of it, the boundary that keeps grief from being mined. If dignity has a sound, it's the scratch of a pen on the right line and the soft click of a door that opens because you were patient enough to learn how. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe to Telling Story with Me for more first-person dramas. Tell me in the comments, what does a true legacy look like to you, and who would you trust to carry it forward?